This is the moment a Houthi-fired ballistic missile was apparently shot down by Saudi forces. The Yemen-based Houthis say they were targeting the Al Yamama Royal Palace, which is west of the capital, Riyadh. A large group of Saudi leaders were meeting there at the time, including King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The missile attack happened just hours before Saudi Arabia was due to announce its annual budget. As well as members of the royal family, senior ministers were also expected to attend. A social media post from a government agency confirmed a missile had been intercepted, but that no casualties were reported. The Saudi-led coalition, which has been conducting airstrikes against Houthi fighters in Yemen for nearly 3 years, retaliated with more strikes in the southern part of the capital, Sana'a. Speaking on the group's TV channel, Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi said the missile attacks marks 1,000 days since the start of the war in Yemen.
Today, a Burkan 2 missile was launched, targeting Al Yamama Palace in the heart of Riyadh city of Saudi Arabia. This is our answer to them and the whole world. The more crimes you perpetrate, the more tyrannical you are, you will meet nothing but more missiles.
This isn't the first Houthi missile attack on Saudi Arabia. In November, the international airport in Riyadh was narrowly missed in a strike. The Saudi government has accused regional rival Iran of smuggling missiles and technology to the Houthis, an allegation Tehran denies. The war in Yemen has created what the UN describes as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Since the start of the conflict, at least 10,000 civilians have been killed and millions are on the brink of famine. And as the fighting continues, many fear the situation on the ground could get worse.
And President Trump is describing the threats of radical jihad and the Iranian influence as the prime cause for instability in the Middle East, as opposed to previous American assertions who considered the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as the main reason preventing peace in the region. This was part of President Trump's first national security strategy speech last night in Washington.
President Trump, Chris, is making a major speech later today about national security, and he's expected to take a new tone regarding the Middle East. Tell us about that.
I think one of the big things he's going to do, Mark, is he's going to recognize that there's been this Sunni alliance that he has actually built. The Sunni alliance would be Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, some of the Gulf states with Israel, and not necessarily publicly, but certainly privately, this growing alliance against the expansion of Iran. And I think he's going to be talking about trying to stem and stop the influence and the expansion of the Iranian regime, which already has Iraq as sort of a puppet government, which controls much of Syria through Hezbollah and controls most, if not all, of Lebanon right now through Hezbollah as well. And so they're trying to have a land bridge all the way from Iran to the Mediterranean. And so I think one of the things Trump is going to do is say, this is something that is in the interest of the United States national security, that Iran's influence be stopped, lest it be a threat to the whole region and especially to Israel.
Pat, turning overseas, Christians in Jerusalem are cheering Trump's decision. As Chris Mitchell reports, some see the president's announcement as one more step towards Israel fulfilling a prophecy.
The United Nations Security Council met on Monday to reverse President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. It's the latest development in a long history involving the Holy City.
In 1980, Israel passed the Jerusalem Law. It designated Jerusalem as the eternal, undivided capital of the Jewish state. Then in protest, the nations of the world moved their embassies from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. But later that year, a group of Christians founded the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
They said we need to act and we need to establish an international Christian embassy, Jerusalem, in order to show the whole world that no matter what our governments are doing, there are Christians around the world which do believe in God's covenants and faithful promises to the Jewish people. And that was our founding hour.
In 1995, ICEJ Vice President David Parsons helped write legislation known as the Jerusalem Embassy Act, destined for the U.S. Congress.
And we said three things, Chris: recognize Jerusalem as the capital, move the ambassador there immediately, and then worry about building a building. But as the bill went through Congress, it got changed to build the building first, and now 22 years later, after all these delays and waivers, it is back to our order.
Both men see Jerusalem as being on a 50-year cycle known in the Bible as Jubilee, where every 50th year is a year of liberty and restitution. 150 years ago, British archaeologist Charles Warren discovered the original city of David. 50 years later, in 1917, General Edmund Allenby captured the city of Jerusalem, ending 400 years of Muslim Ottoman rule. In 1967, Israel recaptured the old city in Temple Mount for the first time in more than 2,000 years. Then came 2017.
We believed God would do something significant this year here in Jerusalem. And lo and behold, at the end of the year, your government, Donald Trump, the American government, decided to recognize Jerusalem as the capital and also move the embassy here.
Something new and exciting is happening for Jerusalem itself that propels it, releases it further into its prophetic destiny.
Now there's the hope more nations will follow Americans' lead and move their embassies.
We're hearing word Guatemala may come back, Tanzania, the Philippines. You can start listing off some of these countries that we hope they have the courage to follow the lead of the American administration now to return to Jerusalem.
They feel it's critical for Christians around the world to pray for Jerusalem.
The violence that's been threatened, that God, in a year of favor, in a year of Jubilee, that He would take care of that. We've been praying that here in Jerusalem, any fire, any anger would be doused.
A recent United Nations report says migration has increased significantly since the beginning of the century. The report, released December 18th, estimates there are 258 million people living in a different country than the one they were born in. That number has nearly doubled since the year 2000. The US has got about 50 million migrants, which is around 19% of the global total and more than any other country. Following the US are Saudi Arabia, Germany and Russia, which each have around 12 million migrants.
Arrests took place in the northern city of Sheffield and also in nearby Chesterfield. An army bomb disposal unit was sent to the home of one of the suspects in Chesterfield. Residents there were evacuated as a precaution. Police say the arrests were based on intelligence and are part of an ongoing investigation. There were no further details given about a possible target of this plot, but there is extra security at Christmas markets in the UK, such as here in Birmingham. Barriers in place there to prevent vehicle attacks. Police say the measures are to reassure the public. People should not be alarmed. But this, Sandra, is what many Christmas markets look like 1 year after that deadly truck attack in Berlin.
A year after the German Christmas market bombing, which killed 12 people and injured dozens more, Chancellor Angela Merkel attended a ceremony at the site. But over the past year, many have criticised the way the German government has treated the families of the attack victims. Some have said authorities treated them callously or neglected them. But Merkel met with those who were affected to hear their concerns.
It
was a very open, and from the side of the people who are concerned, a very merciless talk that showed the weaknesses of our state in dealing with this situation. Today is a day of mourning, but also a day of the will to do better, things which have not worked well. Anis Amri, a failed Tunisian asylum seeker with Islamist links, hijacked a truck, killing its driver and then ploughing it into a crowded Berlin Christmas market.
New documents have emerged in the German press that show the security services knew Amri was a potential terror threat back in 2015 and may have allowed him to remain at large in the hope of using him to catch bigger fish.
Despite the rise of global extremism, it turns out that terrorist guidelines and bomb-making instructions are still easily available online. RT's Jacqueline Vuga has been surfing for such material.
In less than 10 minutes, I was able to find multiple guides published by terrorist organizations through Google searches, clearly outlining how to make a bomb. We have chosen not to show nor name the handbooks we found, but they included step-by-step instructions in English from both Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. And within them, you can find lessons on kidnappings or carrying out various types of assassinations using explosives. And the problem is, anyone can find this information, including those hoping to put it to use. The bomb used in last week's New York subway attack included hallmark components of these readily available terrorist manuals.
I just feel like this is a very scary moment for everyone, for all New Yorkers.
I think it's kind of normal for these times, or particularly in New York City, which is targeted many times, and it's the new normal.
Once a potential terrorist has the recipe for a homemade device, that only leaves gathering the necessary materials. An investigation back in September found that Amazon's algorithm was suggesting items that could be bought together in order to create a bomb. That surfaced just days after an improvised device was detonated in the London Underground.
Oh, is that bag's on fire?
According to Britain's Ministry of Defence on Tuesday, the UK's largest ever warship, the new $4.2 billion aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth, has a leak and is in need of repairs. The 65,000-ton ship was officially commissioned by the Queen just 2 weeks ago and has been hailed as Britain's most advanced military vessel. However, a Royal Navy spokesman said that the ship has an issue with a shaft seal that was identified while the ship was undergoing sea trials. According to the Sun newspaper, the nation's future flagship vessel was letting in 200 liters of water every hour, and the necessary repairs would cost millions of pounds.
Japan has approved the deployment of a new anti-missile system to counter threats from North Korea. The cabinet voted on December 19th to deploy 2 U.S.-made Aegis ashore anti-missile batteries. Japan currently uses the Aegis systems on warships stationed in the Sea of Japan, coupled with U.S.-made Patriot missiles. The cabinet has not released where they plan to install the system or the exact figures for the cost of the batteries, waiting until the release of the 2018 budget. However, sources familiar with the plan told Reuters the systems would cost about $2 billion and not be operational until 2023. Japan's defense ministry said they also consider the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD system, currently deployed for missile defense in South Korea. However, they said Aegis would be more cost-effective, requiring only 2 sites as opposed to the 6 required for THAAD.
South Korea wants the U.S. to hold off on joint military exercises before the 2018 Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang. During an interview with NBC, South Korea's President Moon Jae-in said the move could help convince North Korea to pause its nuclear and missile test until after the Games. He told the outlet if North Korea stops its provocations leading up to the Pyeongchang Olympics, it will greatly help in holding a safe Olympics. Also, it will help in creating conducive atmosphere toward inter-Korean as well as U.S.-North Korean dialogue. Moon said the U.S. is thinking about his proposal. The Winter Olympics are from February 9th through the 25th.
Easy to carry, sweet, and very tasty, the banana is one of the world's most popular fruits. In the U.S. market, there are more bananas than apples and oranges combined. But today, the most common variety of the banana, the Cavendish, is under threat. Yes, that's probably the one you usually put in your fruit bowl. A fungus known as Fusarium wilt started out affecting plantations in Asia and Australia and has made its way to the Middle East and Africa. If the disease reaches Central and Latin America, where the majority of exported bananas come from, it could be game over for the Cavendish and for a number of local varieties that are also affected. Why can't we just stop the fungus? The problem is, unlike many other fruits, bananas don't have seeds. So most sweet bananas consumed around the world are clones that originate from just 2 varieties, and both show little resistance to the disease. It's not the first time the banana is being threatened by a disease. The Cavendish became popular after an earlier strain of the fungus attacked its predecessor, the Gros Michel, in the 1950s. The Cavendish was smaller than the Gros Michel, but resistant to the disease. So what happens if the Cavendish is wiped out? This time around, there is no clear replacement. Scientists around the world are searching for alternatives. In Honduras, scientists are trying to crossbreed 2 varieties to come up with a new breed that's more resistant to this disease. And in Australia, work is underway on a genetically modified, super-resistant Cavendish, although consumers in markets like Europe and Japan are wary of genetically modified products. Still, some scientists say that genetically modifying the Cavendish is the only way to keep these bananas available for everyone.
The National Institutes of Health will allow funding for research to make some viruses more dangerous and easier to spread. It lifted a moratorium that was in place for 3 years that essentially banned the act while it decided if it was worth the risk. Experiments aim to see what actions will create pandemics. The new policy applies to dangerous viruses like SARS, MERS, and influenza. But some say these experiments pose substantial risks to human life, and some worry the viruses may escape from the lab or be used as a weapon. Others in the scientific community say they need to study the pandemics to better learn how they work.
This week, Facebook announced that it's going to start scanning all the photos uploaded to the social network looking for your face, unless you opt out or unless you are European or Canadian, where privacy law actually limits what Facebook can do with people's faces. Gizmodo shares that according to Facebook, the scanning is to alert you if someone has publicly uploaded a photo of you that you don't know about, especially if they are trying to impersonate you. A Facebook spokesperson shared this about the facial recognition tool, saying, "I can also confirm that we do not use this technology in people you may know."
Oxford Dictionaries announced its 2017 Word of the Year, but many say they have never heard anyone use it. So here it is, youthquake. The word is defined as a significant cultural, political or social change arising from the actions or influence of young people. The term was coined in 1965 by Vogue's editor-in-chief Diana Reeland to reflect youth leading the changes in music and fashion industries. A large young voter turnout in Britain's elections this summer may have revived the word. Headlines for media organisations like The Guardian use the word to describe the results. People on social media, however, said they are confused on why it was chosen. Oxford Dictionaries reported it saw a spike in use for 2017 compared to the previous year, and its president said the word is a reflection of social and political words used this year.
The Washington Post reported a story in December saying that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention had been banned from saying 7 words. Those words are entitlement, diversity, transgender, fetus, evidence-based, science-based, and vulnerable. Yet government agencies have now spoken up about the article and have said this was a mistake and that these words are not banned, but are discouraged from being used when appealing for funding from Republicans in Congress. A former federal official told the New York Times that they are recommending the CDC to not use these words because it is a strategy to get funded.
On Tuesday, South Carolina's capital would become the first U.S. city to ban the use of bump stocks. Bump stocks are a gun accessory that has drawn national scrutiny after its use in the Las Vegas mass shooting in October that killed 58 people and wounded hundreds. Columbia Mayor Steve Benjamin said the city council was expected to vote on Tuesday night to approve an ordinance barring the devices. The devices allow semi-automatic rifles to fire hundreds of rounds a minute like fully automatic machine guns.
Bro's just chilling on Shepherd Road. I don't know what, he wants to get down there to that pit. Go. Come on. You got this, little guy. You got this, little guy. You got this, little guy. You got this, little guy.